Hello and welcome to Access with Fatima. My name is Fatima and right now I'm in the Ministry of Budget and Planning in the Office of the Honorable Commissioner Mohammed Sani. Some of us have heard about the zero-based budget, but most of us are not familiar with it and very few of us even understand it. So the Commissioner will give us an overview and hopefully enlighten us adequately. Thank you, sir, for having us.
Thank you very much, Fatima. It's a pleasure to have you here at the Ministry of Budget and Planning. With regards to the zero-based budget, which is a new budgeting framework that Kaduna State has adopted, perhaps it would be important to go into a bit of background. Over the past 10 to 15 years, we have used a budget in Kaduna where items have remained for years in the budget, and what happens is that every year the politicians and the civil servants just take the same items and just add 10% to them and then drag them down and say we have a new budget. Now what has happened is then that the state has moved from a state that was spending about 40 billion on paper to the current budget, which is 203 billion naira. Now that has resulted in a lot of expectations that have not been met. We did our calculations and found out that Kaduna has actually never spent out of its own money more than 70 billion naira, but is budgeting 203 billion. Now what that means is that the roads, the schools, the hospitals that are put in the budget never get done. The only thing that gets done is the payment of the salaries and allowances of public officials. And so what we have is that when the budget is presented at the beginning of the year, contractors line up, people are happy when they see the projects that are planned for their communities and towns, because they formulate the budget in such a way that it looks nice. You know, 200 billion, you're planning to spend more than 120 billion on capital expenditure, and then you are planning to spend less than 90 billion on personnel. But what happens at the end of the year is that you see that the 120 billion that was planned for capital never gets materialized. And the only thing that is paid, as I mentioned, is the salaries and allowances. So you end up with 10% capital, 90% recurrent. So what we have introduced for this year, and the budget process has already started this week, is we have introduced a zero-based budget. Now what that means is that every single line item in the budget must be justified. Justified in the sense that we want to know from the bottom up why you're putting this project in the budget, how is it going to impact the lives of the people of Kaduna State, can we actually fund it, is there a better way to do it? So all these questions will need to be justified by the various ministries, departments and agencies. And not only are we justifying capital projects, but we also want to understand the structure of the personnel. For every single ministry that's submitting a personnel cost, we want to know the exact staff number, because what we found out is that there are bogus personnel, what we've been terming as ghost workers, that have been sucking this state dry. So we need to get a handle of that. We also have bogus pensioners. We have bogus gratuity payments. So we are starting from scratch, and that is ultimately what the zero-based budget means.
How does the zero-based budget affect the budget framework?
Yes, so like I mentioned, what we are doing is a totally new framework. We are not expecting to hear from any ministry, department or agency that this is how things used to be done. We don't want to hear that. We want to start on a fresh page. We want to have the ability to determine what goes on and what stays off our budget. And so the entire process itself of designing the budget has changed. We just sent out a call circular for the 2016 budget 2 days ago, which will require MDAs to respond over the next 2 weeks with their proposals of what they intend to do in 2016. Now, this is a very different sort of process, and we're working very closely with the ministries to ensure that there's success.
So what happens to ongoing capital projects that were inherited from the previous administration?
That's a very good, that's a very important question. We've inherited capital projects, significant capital projects from other administrations that have been abandoned, some were still ongoing, some were at the inception phase. So the first thing that the governor did was to undertake an assessment of all these ongoing projects. We already have a 120-page report, very detailed report, on each and every single one of these projects. What we looked for was to see which ones have actually been started, which ones are close to completion, how was the costing done initially, is it value for money, do we continue it, do we move it to next year, do we postpone it, do we scrap it altogether? These are decisions that are currently being taken, and we think that as the ministries are sending it back, we will also see what they send back to us. But the thing about it is that we inherited over 30 billion naira of outstanding payments to contractors, which had not been paid for a very long time. We have to go through these line by line to see that Kaduna is getting value for money. Possibly look at and sit down with a few of the contractors to see what level of work they've done. Is it qualitative? We do not want to send our children to schools, for example, that would collapse because of a poor DPC or lintel. So these are all things we have to look at structurally and holistically, and it's an ongoing process. But we do have, as I mentioned, a 120-page report that we're studying very closely to see exactly how to factor in these projects in the future.
Do the ministries, departments and agencies have the required skills to embark on this ambitious zero-based budget?
Well, zero-based budgets, this is the first time I think that definitely that any state in Nigeria is embarking on it. I haven't seen any country in Africa that's done it actually. So it is pretty new, and we recognize that. We have sat down over the past few weeks without weekends, without normal sleeping hours, to design a process that is as simplified as possible but will get us the information that we require. Now, this has started with automating a lot of the processes. So we're looking towards IT to simplify a lot of the processes. We've deployed it already. And what we're doing from this ministry is that we're sitting down and providing a lot of support to the various MDAs. We're starting off with a helpline, which ministries can call in if they have any challenges during the budget process. We're doing in-person visits to the various MDAs over the next 1 week to ensure that we take them along and we sit down and we thrash out all the things that might come up. We are providing as much support as possible. There's a desk here at the Ministry of Budget and Planning that is dedicated strictly to supporting MDAs to go through this difficult teething process, but we're confident that we will go through it. We've sat down, we've done our homework. The governor has given us his full backing and support, and he's advised all the MDAs to comply, and my colleagues, we've sat down with them and they are also on the same page. They understand why we're doing this. It is ultimately for the betterment of the people of Kaduna State. So I guess, yes, I think we are prepared to support as much as possible.
Will the zero-based budget be employed in the 2015 budget review?
So, no. The zero-based budget is going to start with the 2016 budget process, and we're happy to see that the federal government will also be employing this budget framework for its own 2016 preparations.
The traditional cost budget takes at least 5 months to get prepared, and it is we know that we heard that the governor wants the draft of the zero-based budget presented to the assembly actually by the 1st of November. And meanwhile, some of the ministries, departments and agencies are still not conversant with the concepts of zero-based budget. So how do you plan to address this challenge before 1st of November?
Well, over the past few weeks, we've embarked on large-scale training of every single MDA. We've taken 2 people per MDA to train them on what is required. We've sat down countless weekends with my colleagues, other commissioners, the governor himself, the heads of agencies. So I think we're at a reasonably level now in terms of capacity to roll it out. We are in time to present the budget, at least for the council deliberations. At that time, we've come up with a detailed work plan, which we are discussing and fine-tuning as we go along. We hope that Kaduna State will have a budget at the 1st of January. The governor has appealed to the State Assembly as much as possible to be prepared as well, so that when we present it, when he presents the budget to the House, it can go through a thorough yet speedy process as well. We are trying as much as possible to incorporate public opinions and what the public wants to appear in the budget. We do not want to just present something that is technocratic. We want it to be owned by the people. So as soon as the draft budget is ready, His Excellency has committed to going round to visit people through the town halls that he's already been having, but also to sit down with various interest groups, the private sector, the labor leaders, all of them to sit down and have a bit of understanding and input into the budget process. And yes, we do plan to do it in a very short time period, and we're asking for the support of everybody towards this, making this successful.
How will the Ministry of Budget and Planning ensure that the specific goal and the overall goals of the state government and that of the ministries, departments, and agencies get synchronized?
Well, I think that's a very critical and important question, particularly because we're trying as much as possible to ensure that the budget at the end of the day is very closely linked to policy, because budgets are tools for implementing policy. It's not just a collation of contracts and payments that people want to make. It's the instrument by which government delivers on jobs, on healthcare, on education, on security, on infrastructure. And so as part of the call circular that has gone out, ministries are required, departments and agencies are all required to ensure that whatever projects they're submitting has a coherent policy framework behind it, which we have articulated in the Restoration Master Plan. In addition, we have the Transition Committee report of the government, which was formulated at the beginning of the handover. Now that report has detailed recommendations on every single sector, and we want to be able to take that on board and implement it. So these are the 2 sort of major documents. Now, in addition, the state has made a commitment of integrating the newly launched United Nations Sustainable Development Goals into its state policy. And that also, as much as possible, the ministries, departments, and agencies will consult with the document and see how best to integrate it in the budget.
What are the relevant activities that will be put in place by your ministry, that's the Ministry of Budget and Planning, to ensure that the goals of the state government and the ministries, departments, and agencies get achieved?
Yeah, so one of the biggest problems that Kaduna has had in the past is the implementation of the budget, the implementation of policies of government. We've had a lot of glossy, nice-looking documents that lay out ambitious plans, but they never get achieved. And so the focus, as anybody who has followed Governor Nasir El-Rufai's antecedents, his entire focus is on delivery. We want to, as much as possible, cut out the philosophical arguments, the ideological debates, and focus on what it is that this government was voted to do. And it is voted to uplift the lives of the people of Kaduna State. And that's what we're totally focused on. Now, so that's why from the very beginning, we're looking at the budget and seeing what can we realistically implement. We don't want a budget that promises things that are unachievable. The governor has already started to put together what he's calling a delivery unit, which is going to be tasked with ensuring that this entire government delivers on its promises. We are also coming up with a budget implementation plan, which will ensure that ministries, departments, and agencies are held accountable for the budget proposals that they put there, and they will be graded and marked and get rewarded or punished based on the implementation of the budget.
Another newly adopted policy is the Treasury Single Account, the TSA. How is it doing in Kaduna State?
Well, I think to quote an IMF visiting team which came to Kaduna about 3 weeks ago, and after going into the entire process that we used to roll out the TSA and where it is today, their comment, and I quote, was that this is the most impressive rollout of the TSA that they've seen anywhere in the world. And I think they are soon going to document this. We are also documenting it. But basically, in two quick nutshells, what it has allowed us to do is that we moved from a Kaduna where the former government knew of 82 accounts, around 82 accounts, to finding out that there were actually 470 accounts. We moved from a Kaduna where we were thinking that the cash lying around was about 10 to 15 billion, to finding that there was upwards of 25, 26 billion spread across different accounts. So in one quick answer, how's the TSA doing in Kaduna? Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.